Caldwell, Fox News political analyst, and David Carlucci, former Democrat state senator from New York. Great to see you both. First of all, I want to get your top line thoughts about a Kennedy in the race at this point, RFK Jr. And David, I'll come to you. I've heard people in your party call him all sorts of names and blah, 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 blah. But the fact of the matter is, if you get 19% of support, they're not votes yet, but support, is it a cause for worry?
I don't think it is a cause for worry. I think Biden is well on his way to secure the Democratic nomination. The poll that was mentioned earlier, 58% of Democrats want someone else. Well, once you put a name and a face on that person, those numbers start to plummet. I mean, RFK Jr., I believe that his 20% polling number that he got that number before he even opened his mouth and said any bit of his platform. I think that has to do more with the fact that he's a Kennedy than anything else. But once people actually see his platform, I don't think any Democrats are actually going to vote for him. In fact, I think RFK Jr. would be better suited to run in the Republican primary than in the Democratic primary. When you see his talking points, he's talking a lot like Donald Trump and a lot less like Joe Biden.
On some issues. I don't think anybody would really get him confused, and he wouldn't let you get him confused. He knows who he is, and he has talked about being a Democrat. But just because you're a Democrat doesn't mean that you can't appreciate what the other side is saying. That's a note that this president ought to take and stamp it right on his forehead. All right, Giano, 58%, you just heard that from David, Democrats want, and it's what I call ABB, anybody but Biden.
Right. Yeah, and you know what? I can agree with one point that David raised. I don't think that this is, for Joe Biden, something that he should be too concerned with when we've seen that the Democratic Party, the DNC, is willing to rig an election in favor of their preferred candidate. We saw it in 2016 with Hillary Clinton against Bernie Sanders. We're seeing it now when you especially have a candidate in a race, and I'm going to disagree with David on this one point, that he got this percentage before he even opened his mouth. Actually, he was in single digits when he initially announced, barely hitting double digits, and now his take has grown because he's willing to tell the truth on a number of issues, which we've not seen necessarily from Joe Biden or many Democrats. I think a lot of folks are living in this la-la land, if you will, where facts don't matter and truth is something that's told only when it favors you. And that's what we continue to see. So if the mainstream media would actually cover Robert Kennedy Jr. fairly, his poll numbers would go up. If they allowed him to debate, his poll numbers would go up because Americans, especially Democrats, do not want to see Joe Biden run again.
Look, Joe Manchin, we don't know, David and Giano, if he's serious about getting in, but he really doesn't have much of a lily pad to stand on at home after voting for the Inflation Reduction Act, which yielded nothing in energy for his state. I told him that that would happen right on this program. He said I was lying. I was right.
You sure did.
All right, let's move on. The funeral for Chicago police officer Ariana Preston is underway. Hundreds, if not more, gathering to honor that young officer who was killed in a robbery earlier this month. Just yesterday, 2 members of the Progressive Democrat so-called squad voted against honoring police officers killed in the line of duty. How can you be against that? Congresswomen Rashida Tlaib and Cori Bush were the only no votes on a resolution to honor fallen cops and express condolences to their loved ones. Backlash was quick. Republican Senator Rick Scott going after Democrats, tweeting, "Shame on them for refusing to support our brave law enforcement officers." Shame on those two. Giano.
Absolutely shameful. And Cori Bush, with all the money she spent for private security, to not acknowledge the value that our law enforcement officers across the nation bring. Is there a need for additional training? Sure. Have there been officers that made mistakes? Sure. But the majority of officers are absolutely honorable. In the city of Chicago in 2021, it was announced by the superintendent of police, David Brown, that 76 officers were either shot or shot at in the city of Chicago. It is terrible what's going on, how the fact that law enforcement is not respected in that city and across the nation. But I am happy to see that so many officers are out to support this beautiful young lady who chose to put her life on the line to help and protect those within the city of Chicago. She was such an honorable woman, and I'm so sorry to see what has happened, and I hope that something like this isn't something that we're going to continue to see happen in Chicago and across the nation.
David, I want to come to you. It's National Police Week, and one might say the timing for Bush and Tlaib could not have been worse to vote against this. But how do you go against supporting your officers at a time when so many Democrat-led cities are really underwater for violent crime?
Well, first, we have to point to the fact that 99.5% of all congressional Democrats voted in favor of that resolution. And to say that Tlaib and Cori Bush somehow speak for the Democratic Party would be like George Santos speaking for the Republican Party. So we have to make that distinction. And then if we look further, we see that they did issue a statement clarifying their position that they support law enforcement safety, that they had more of an issue with this being a referendum, that the Republicans are the protectors of emergency services, public safety. And that's what I think this disagreement is. But in no way should the Democratic Party get behind these two members of Congress. That is not the representation of the Democratic Party. And I think that's what we have to put into perspective here, that people can have deflecting opinions, differing opinions, vote no on resolutions. But we got to look further to see what are they talking about? What type of message are they trying to send? And when we see these members, they did put forth that clarification that they were against this referendum, but that in no way diminishes their support for the safety of our law enforcement.
David, we got to be honest here. These two women are stars of the Democratic Party. They also were big and behind the defund the police movement. This is absolutely in coordination with what they believed from the very beginning. They do not support law enforcement. They've been very consistent in that. And you say, okay, 99% of Democrats did support the resolution. But the truth is, these are two stars within the Democratic Party. These are two individuals who are often a part of the media class that Democrats listen to. We're talking about the activists, etc. So we got to be very honest about this. They don't support the police.
Let's let David respond. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I'm saying that we talk about the squad. Even half of the squad voted in favor of this resolution, as did all other Democrats. I think what these members are trying to say is that it's not enough to just pass a resolution, that we have to get serious about protecting the safety of all individuals, but particularly law enforcement, and making sure that we're not just doing resolutions,
David?
But backing
That's what you say you
police.
think that they are trying to say. And those would be interesting words to hear from them and for them to have put perhaps before their vote, but that's not what happened. And we're just going to cover the facts that they are in fact stars of the party. And there's plenty of video out there with Tlaib kind of roughing it up with police officers trying to stick cuffs on her. So maybe it's personal.
Even
she has
had
in her past.
They did put out a
nasty habit of being a little loud and out of control at some events. The law did its job. She continues to do her elected job. We'll leave it there. David Carlucci, former state senator of New York, really appreciate your time. Thank you.